Clarissa Monroe had just adjusted the pillow beneath Ms. Millie's frail neck when the old woman blinked slowly and whispered, "You're quiet today, honey. Everything all right?" Clarissa offered a tired smile as she tucked the blanket higher on the 91-year-old woman's chest. "Just a little worn out, Miss Millie. Nothing a good night's sleep won't fix." But that wasn't the truth. Not even close. Outside the window of Golden Pines Nursing Home, Gainesville's early spring wind rustled through the magnolia trees. Clarissa stood still for a moment, letting her hand rest on the metal bed rail, her gaze distant, far from the sterile white walls of the room. It had been exactly 5 years to the day. 5 years since she opened the door in her bathrobe to find 2 deputies from Hall County standing on her porch, their hats pressed low and eyes full of awkward sympathy. 5 years since they pushed past her into their small apartment and found Reggie, her husband, her best friend, her heart, sitting confused on the couch, remote in hand, just seconds away from switching to his usual Sunday football. They cuffed him right there. He didn't struggle. He didn't even flinch when they read him his rights. Clarissa remembered screaming, shaking, swearing it was a mistake. Reggie was home with her the whole night. But then came the evidence. Blurry gas station surveillance footage, matching fingerprints, eyewitnesses that were certain it was him. What followed was a blur, arraignment, trial, plea deal. Reggie confessed, said he did it to pay for his mother's chemo, said he was desperate, said he was sorry. He was sentenced to 15 years at Red Ridge Correctional Facility in Louisiana. The last words he spoke to her before the guards led him away still echoed in her mind every time she tried to sleep. "I love you, Clar. Wait for me." And she had, for 5 long years. Clarissa blinked away a sting in her eyes and reached into the front pocket of her navy blue scrubs. The photo she kept folded there was worn around the edges, the colors faded. Reggie, smiling wide in his prison uniform, eyes still kind beneath the exhaustion. She hadn't seen him in months. The prison was 9 hours away by bus. And after paying rent and buying groceries, most of her paycheck was already gone. Even now, she had barely enough to keep gas in the car she'd bought used and on its last leg. When his mother died 3 years ago, Clarissa picked up the funeral costs. No family should bury their own in silence. "I'll be right back with your tea," Clarissa said gently to Ms. Millie and stepped into the hallway. The staff lounge was quiet, just the soft buzz of vending machine and the clack of keyboard keys from a nurse catching up on notes. Clarissa sat down on the worn beige couch and looked down at Reggie's picture again. His smile always used to calm her. But today, something about it twisted in her chest. She couldn't name it, just a heaviness. A murmur in her gut. Emma, the head nurse, appeared around the corner holding a clipboard. "Clarissa, you free this afternoon?" Clarissa sat up straighter. "Depends. What do you need?" "Got a new home care patient. Hip replacement, lives out in Riverside Heights. Just needs some help getting settled and a vitals check. Pays overtime. You in?" Clarissa hesitated only a second. "Absolutely." Emma handed her a folder. "House number's on Oak Hill Lane. Be there by 5:30. Clarissa looked out the window as the sky shifted from soft gray to amber. The wind rattled the trees again, louder this time. A strange stillness filled the air, like the moment just before a storm. She didn't know it yet, but today, on the 5th anniversary of Reggie's arrest, her life was about to be upended again. And this time, the truth would cut even deeper. The bus ride to Riverside Heights took just under 40 minutes, but for Clarissa Monroe, it felt like a journey to another world. She hadn't been to that side of Gainesville in years. It was new money territory, gated communities with golf course views, wide sidewalks, and mailboxes that probably got polished more than most people's floors. Clarissa tugged her coat tighter as the bus hissed to a stop outside the entrance. She stepped off and walked slowly down Oak Hill Lane, counting the house numbers. The air smelled like fresh mulch and blooming dogwood trees. Kids rode bikes without helmets. Sprinklers hissed softly across perfect green lawns. Clarissa stopped in front of house number 82, a clean one-story with a white brick exterior and navy shutters. She double-checked the address Emma had written. This was it. Her new patient lived here. But just as she stepped onto the sidewalk, something caught her eye. The front door of the house next door, number 84, opened and a man stepped out. He was holding a baby carrier in one hand and keys in the other. He turned slightly, just enough for Clarissa to see the side of his face. She froze. Her knees went weak. Her vision blurred, like the world had tilted without warning. The man had the same build, the same tall, lean frame, same walk, same tilt of the head when he spoke to the woman behind him. Young, beautiful, with long braids and a wide smile. She cradled the baby in her arms and kissed the man on the cheek as he opened the car door for her. Clarissa blinked hard. It couldn't be. It just couldn't. But when the man turned to buckle the baby's seat, the fading sunlight hit his face fully, and she saw it. The eyes, the smile, that unmistakable scar above his right eyebrow. It was Reggie, her husband. Except it couldn't be. Reggie was in Red Ridge Correctional Facility in Louisiana. She'd spoken to the prison less than 6 months ago. He'd written her last month. There was even a photo in her pocket, him in his orange jumpsuit, sitting on a bench in the prison yard. So who was this? The man climbed into a silver sedan and started the engine. Clarissa stood frozen on the sidewalk, mouth slightly open, chest pounding so loud it muffled the rest of the world. The car drove past her slowly. He didn't look at her, didn't even notice her. But Clarissa got a perfect, up-close look at his face as he passed. It was Reggie, or someone who could have been his identical twin. She couldn't move, couldn't breathe. By the time she regained her senses, the car had turned the corner and disappeared. Clarissa turned and looked back at house number 84. The woman had gone back inside, the baby's cries faint through the window. Clarissa walked slowly toward the porch, heart still hammering. There was a name on a mailbox, the Jacksons. That didn't mean much. Maybe she was losing her mind. Maybe it wasn't Reggie. Maybe grief had finally pushed her over the edge. But she knew her husband's face. She'd traced it in her dreams for 5 years. She'd kissed it through tears behind visiting room glass. She'd memorized the lines around his mouth and the way his eyebrows creased when he smiled. This man, he was Reggie. Or he was someone who had no business looking like him. Clarissa took a shaky breath and crossed the street to house number 82. She went through the motions, took her patient's vitals, checked the incision site, filled out the forms, but she barely registered a word the elderly man said. Her mind was back across the street, staring into the eyes of a ghost she thought was still behind bars. When the visit was over, she walked back toward the bus stop but couldn't resist turning around one last time. The house sat quiet. Lights were on in the living room. She saw shadows move past the curtains. Back home in her one-bedroom apartment, Clarissa didn't even take off her coat before picking up the phone. Her hands shook as she dialed. A few rings, then a tired male voice answered. Red Ridge Correctional Facility, Officer Mathers speaking. Hi. Yes, I need to check on an inmate. Reginald Monroe. I'm his wife. Clarissa Monroe. There was a pause. Then typing. Yes, ma'am. Reginald Monroe is still in our custody, serving a 15-year sentence for armed robbery. Would you like to schedule a visit? Clarissa's knees gave out, and she sank slowly onto the edge of her couch. And he's physically there? According to our records, he's in cell block B. No transfers. No hospital runs. Thank you, she whispered and hung up. For a full minute, Clarissa sat in silence, staring at the blank television screen. She hadn't imagined it. She knew what she saw. Reggie, or someone who looked just like him, was living in a house in Riverside Heights, holding a baby, kissing a woman, wearing clean clothes, and walking free. And tomorrow, she was going back to find out exactly who he was. Clarissa didn't sleep that night. She laid in bed staring at the ceiling, heart pounding like a second pulse in her throat. Her mind replayed the scene over and over again. The man buckling the baby into the car seat, that faint scar above his brow, the quiet way he carried himself, just like Reggie always had. It wasn't wishful thinking. It wasn't grief. It wasn't a dream. It was real, and she needed answers. By morning, her decision was made. She called Golden Pines and told Emma she had come down with a cold. It wasn't a complete lie. Her stomach was knotted with so much anxiety she could barely eat. She pulled out the best clothes she owned, a pair of pressed jeans, a light blue blouse, and a pair of gold earrings Reggie gave her back when they had something to celebrate. She looked at herself in the mirror. Tired eyes, circles dark and heavy, but the sharp cheekbones and full lips were still there. Reggie always said those lips were what caught his eye the first time he saw her. "You're too pretty to be looking this sad," he used to tease. She stepped out into the early spring sun, boarded 2 buses, and made her way back to Oak Hill Lane. The neighborhood looked the same as the day before. Perfect lawns, quiet streets. No one home at this hour. She made her way toward house number 84, her breath growing shallow as she neared it. No silver sedan in the driveway. Good. He was probably at work. Clarissa paused on the sidewalk across the street and tried to plan her next move. She couldn't just knock on the door and scream, "You look like my husband." That would only get her locked up, or worse. And then the front door opened. The same woman from yesterday stepped out, baby in arms, diaper bag slung over one shoulder. She looked every bit the polished young mom. Oversized sunglasses, athletic tights, pink sneakers. She walked down the steps, kissed the baby's forehead, and climbed into a waiting ride share. Clarissa stood frozen for a second, then crossed the street. Now or never. She climbed the steps slowly, every one of them feeling like a ledge. At the door, she hesitated, then rang the bell. It opened within seconds, and there he was, standing just a few feet away from her, in a crisp white shirt, dark slacks, and a stunned expression. Clarissa's breath caught in her chest. Up close, the resemblance was even more jarring. The same eyes, same build, same mouth. But this man had a shorter haircut. No beard, no prison weight, no orange jumpsuit. Still, she knew, it was Reggie, or someone who had stolen his face. His mouth opened slightly. "Clarissa," he said. Even his voice matched, deep, warm, with a slight huskiness to it. Exactly the way she remembered it. Her stomach churned. "Who are you?" she demanded, arms folded across her chest. "Because you're not my husband. Reggie Monroe is in cell block B of Red Ridge Prison. I checked yesterday." The man looked around quickly, as if afraid the neighbors might be watching. Then he grabbed her by the elbow and pulled her inside. He shut the door behind her and hissed, "What the hell are you doing here?" Clarissa yanked her arm free. "Answer me." There was a long pause before he ran a hand down his face and muttered, "Damn, you weren't supposed to see me." She took a step forward, fists clenched at her sides. "Too late. Now talk." He exhaled and nodded toward the living room. They walked into a beautifully decorated space. Cream leather furniture, abstract art, a flat screen mounted above the fireplace. The kind of home Clarissa had once dreamed of building with Reggie, back when dreams still seemed possible. She refused to sit. He did. "Name's Derek Jackson," he finally said. "People call me DJ. I'm Reggie's cousin." Clarissa narrowed her eyes. "Cousin?" He never mentioned a cousin. Not once in 10 years of marriage. DJ gave a half smile, bitter and sheepish. "Not surprised. We didn't grow up close. I moved to Atlanta when I was 10 with my mom. Me and Reggie, we reconnected later." "When?" Clarissa asked, her voice sharp. DJ swallowed hard. 6 years ago. Right before the robbery." Clarissa's heart thudded. "The robbery you committed?" DJ looked up at her, then slowly nodded. "Yeah, it was me." The room spun. Clarissa gripped the back of a chair to stay upright. He continued, "I was desperate. I had priors. If I got caught again, I was facing life. Reggie, he wanted to help me. Said I still had a shot at turning things around. So he took the blame." "You let him," she whispered, tears stinging the back of her eyes. "You let him rot in a cell while you built this life under his name?" DJ didn't respond. Clarissa stepped closer, her voice trembling. "You stole his freedom, his identity, his chance at a future. And now you've got a wife and baby living a lie." That's when his expression hardened. The remorse evaporated like morning mist. He looked her dead in the eye. "You tell anyone, Monique, the cops, and I swear to God, I'll make sure Reggie never sees the outside again. I got people inside." Clarissa's breath caught. Her next move could destroy everything, or finally set the truth free. Clarissa stood motionless in the middle of that perfect living room, the ticking of a wall clock suddenly sounding deafening. DJ's face, so hauntingly identical to Reggie's, now looked foreign, carved with cold calculation. His smile had vanished. In its place was a warning. "You go to the police or run your mouth to Monique," he said, voice low and sharp, "and Reggie's life in Red Ridge becomes hell. Understand?" Clarissa stared at him, rage trembling beneath her skin. "What kind of man threatens the person who saved him?" she asked, voice shaking. DJ leaned back on the couch, exhaling slowly. "Reggie made a choice. He knew the risks. And in return, I promised him I'd take care of you and his mama." Clarissa's lips curled in bitter disbelief. "Take care of me? You disappeared. You left me to bury his mother alone and work 2 jobs just to survive. That's what your promise meant." For the first time, DJ looked away. Guilt flickered, briefly, but it didn't stay long. "I panicked," he muttered. "I went to Houston, then Dallas. When I came back to Gainesville last year, I met Monique. We got married when she got pregnant. I needed a fresh start. And using Reggie's name, that got me a job. A good one." Clarissa shook her head in disbelief, backing away like the very sight of him made her sick. "You didn't just steal his name. You stole his life." He stood now, too, slowly, towering over her like he was trying to reassert control. But Clarissa didn't flinch. "You're angry. I get it," DJ said. "But think for a second. What could come out of blowing this up? Reggie's still locked up. You say something, he pays the price. And what proof do you have, huh? A confession I can deny? My word against yours." Clarissa didn't answer. He stepped closer. "Don't make this worse than it needs to be." She took a deep breath, holding her ground. "I should ruin you," she said, barely above a whisper. "I should knock on your neighbor's door, scream your real name from the rooftop. But I won't. Not yet." DJ raised an eyebrow. "Not yet. I don't make empty threats," Clarissa said, her eyes cold. "You think I've waited 5 years just to be bullied into silence?" He scoffed. "You do anything stupid, and I'll make one call. One. And Reggie's got problems you can't fix." Then, almost casually, DJ pulled his phone from his pocket and tapped a few buttons. He turned the screen toward her. Clarissa stared in horror. It was a photo, grainy but unmistakable. Reggie, sitting in the prison cafeteria, surrounded by a few other inmates. He looked thinner, older, tired. His smile gone. "Where did you get this?" she asked. "Friend of mine works security at Red Ridge. Keeps an eye on Reggie for now. But that can change." Clarissa's heart thudded like a drum against her ribs. "You're disgusting," she whispered. DJ shrugged. "I do what I have to do. So should you." Clarissa stared at him for a long beat, memorizing his face, not just because it mirrored the man she loved, but because this was the monster she would one day bring down. Without another word, she turned and walked out. The door slammed behind her, the sound echoing in her chest like a gunshot. Outside, the sun was beginning to dip behind the rooftops, casting long shadows across the street. Clarissa stood on the sidewalk, her hands clenched so tight her nails dug into her palms. He was right about one thing. She had no proof. But she had the truth. And the truth was a seed. Once planted, it didn't die. It just needed time. Clarissa Monroe didn't go straight home. Instead, she walked, block after block, heel after heel, until the sun dipped low and the sky turned the color of bruised peaches. She stopped in a little cafe off Sycamore Avenue, somewhere quiet enough for her thoughts to scream without anyone hearing them. She sat in the corner booth, staring at a cup of lukewarm coffee she barely touched. What now? DJ's threats rang in her ears. That photo of Reggie in the prison cafeteria, was it a warning? A reminder? A noose? Clarissa didn't cry. She hadn't in years. Not when Reggie was sentenced. Not when his mother died. Not even when her landlord threatened eviction 2 winters ago. But tonight, something cracked. She stared at the swirling cream in her coffee and whispered to herself, I didn't wait 5 years to stay silent now. No. If DJ thought he could scare her into submission, he picked the wrong woman. Her decision came slow and steady, like the pressure behind a dam before it breaks. She would go back. Not to him. To her. To Monique. The woman deserved to know the truth. Who she had married. Who was living under her roof. Who had fathered her child. Clarissa had been kept in the dark for too long. She wasn't about to let another woman suffer the same fate. By the time she left the cafe, night had fully fallen. Streetlights buzzed overhead. Clarissa made her way back to Oak Hill Lane, hiding in the shadows across the street from house number 84. DJ's silver sedan was in the driveway, lights on in the living room. She waited, hidden beneath a towering oak tree. 1 hour passed, then 2. Finally, just past 9 o'clock, a yellow cab pulled up. Monique stepped out, baby asleep on her shoulder, diaper bag slung over her other arm. She looked tired, like most new mothers did, but still carried that soft warmth Clarissa had noticed the day before. She paid the driver, climbed the steps, and opened the front door. And then, a sound ripped through the night. A scream, piercing, gut-wrenching, terrified. Clarissa's body went cold. Then came a second scream, louder, more desperate. Without thinking, Clarissa bolted across the street. She didn't knock, didn't hesitate. The door was ajar. She burst inside, following the sound of sobbing, through the hallway, into the kitchen, and stopped cold. Blood everywhere. The cream tiles were streaked with deep crimson. It pooled beneath a sprawled figure in the center of the room. DJ, lying motionless on his back, eyes wide open in shock. A single gunshot wound marked the center of his chest. Beside the sink, Monique stood trembling, clutching the crying baby to her chest with one hand, her other hand pressed tightly over her mouth to stifle the screams still coming out in hiccups. Clarissa didn't speak. Couldn't. Her brain struggled to process what her eyes had already accepted. DJ Jackson, the man who had stolen her husband's life, was dead. Sirens echoed down the street less than 2 minutes later. Neighbors began spilling out of their homes in bathrobes and slippers, whispering as red and blue lights painted the quiet neighborhood in panic. Clarissa sat in the back of a squad car, arms wrapped tightly around herself. She wasn't handcuffed, but she wasn't free either. The officer had told her to stay put until homicide arrived. Across the street, Monique sat in another patrol car, the baby swaddled in a blanket. She was pale, still shaking. A social worker tried to speak with her, but Monique refused to let go of the baby. Then came a black SUV, unmarked, matte finish. From it stepped a tall woman in a charcoal suit, her walk crisp, her face unreadable. Detective Dolores Carrington. She approached the cruiser Clarissa was in, tapped the window once, and the officer opened the door. "Clarissa Monroe?" she asked, her voice calm but firm. Clarissa nodded slowly. Dolores climbed in and closed the door behind her. Her gaze was sharp, intelligent, the kind that didn't miss much. "I'm Detective Carrington, Homicide Unit. I need you to tell me everything you know." Clarissa swallowed hard. "I didn't kill him." Dolores didn't flinch. "That's what we're here to find out. Start at the beginning." Clarissa took a long breath and began. She told Dolores everything, from the day she saw the man on Oak Hill Lane, to the phone call to Red Ridge Prison, to the confrontation, to the threats. She held nothing back. Dolores listened in silence, taking occasional notes, never interrupting. When Clarissa finished, the detective paused, then asked, "You're claiming this man, Derek Jackson, was impersonating your husband?" "Yes. He admitted it to me. He said Reggie took the fall so he wouldn't get a life sentence." Dolores's eyes narrowed. "And you have any proof of this?" Clarissa opened her mouth and hesitated. "No, just his words." Dolores nodded slowly, then stepped out of the car. "You're coming with us, Ms. Monroe. We'll continue this conversation downtown." It wasn't a request. Clarissa sat quietly in the back of the new cruiser as it pulled away from the scene. Somewhere between grief and justice was truth, and she was determined to find it. The interrogation room was colder than it needed to be. Gray walls, a metal table, and a long mirror that wasn't just a mirror. Clarissa Monroe sat with her arms folded, staring at the dull reflection. She knew someone was watching from the other side, maybe 2 or 3 someones. It didn't matter. Her fingers tapped nervously on the table until the door finally creaked open. Detective Dolores Carrington stepped in, calm as ever, holding a slim manila folder. She didn't sit right away. Instead, she studied Clarissa like a chessboard she was about to make the next move on. "Gunshot wound to the chest," Dolores said, flipping the folder open and laying down several crime scene photos. "Close range. No weapon recovered." Clarissa looked down, but didn't flinch. I told you. I didn't shoot him. Dolores took a seat across from her, folding her hands neatly. And yet, you had a motive. A man steals your husband's identity, your marriage, your future. I'd say that's enough to push anyone over the edge. Clarissa locked eyes with her. I was furious. Yes, I wanted to scream, throw things, maybe slap him. But I'm not a killer. I don't even own a gun. That's easy enough to verify, Dolores replied. We've already swabbed your hands for gunshot residue. Results should be back soon. There was a brief pause before the door opened again. This time it was Monique. She looked like a ghost of the woman Clarissa had seen earlier. Her mascara smudged, cheeks streaked with dried tears. But she walked in with her back straight, baby-free now, her arms folded tight across her chest. Dolores nodded at her. Miss Harris has agreed to speak with you. In my presence. Monique looked at Clarissa for a long moment. Her voice, when it came, was fragile. You said, he wasn't who he claimed to be? Clarissa nodded, heart thudding again. His name was Derek Jackson. DJ. He was Reggie's cousin. He stole his identity. Reggie's still in prison. Monique's lips trembled. He told me his family was all gone. That he changed his name to leave a violent past. He said he was protecting us. He lied to you, Clarissa said softly, just like he lied to everyone. Dolores stepped in. Miss Harris, did your husband ever mention someone named Leroy Turner? Monique blinked. Leroy, yes. He'd whisper on the phone sometimes. Said he was late paying him. Sounded scared. Dolores jotted a note. Then stood. Thank you. That's all for now. An officer will escort you out. Monique paused at the door, turned to Clarissa. Her voice cracked. I didn't know. I swear. Clarissa offered a sad, understanding smile. I believe you. When the door shut behind Monique, the room was quiet again. Dolores opened her folder once more. We pulled surveillance footage from the bank across the street. At 5:35 p.m., a man identified as Leroy Turner pulled up in a gray sedan. Spent 10 minutes inside the house. Matches our estimated time of death. Clarissa inhaled sharply, the weight beginning to lift. Dolores closed the folder. You're not off the hook yet, but you're no longer our prime suspect. Clarissa leaned back in the chair, exhausted but steadier than before. So now what? Dolores gave a nod. Now we go find Leroy Turner. And for the first time in a long time, Clarissa allowed herself a glimmer of hope. Detective Dolores Carrington didn't waste time. Within 24 hours of that late-night interrogation, an arrest warrant was issued for Leroy Turner, a name Gainesville's underworld knew all too well. He wasn't just a lone shark. He was a man who built his reputation on fear. If you owed Leroy, you didn't sleep easy. And DJ Jackson? He had owed him a lot. Dolores stood in front of the precinct's digital map board, her team clustered behind her. The pin marked Turner blinked on and off in red. Last known location, San Antonio, Texas. Let's bring him in before he disappears for good, she said, crisp and controlled. The manhunt didn't take long. Turner was arrogant. He'd gotten away with too much for too long. They found him holed up at a mid-range motel near the edge of town, alone, high, and completely unaware that his time had run out. When they cuffed him, he smirked. Whatever this is, I didn't do it. But by the time they sat him down in an interview room with surveillance footage, timestamps, and witness statements, his tone changed. And when they showed him a photo of DJ Jackson's body, lifeless, blood pooling beneath his torso, he cracked. He wouldn't pay, Turner muttered, rubbing his temples. Kept ducking me. Said he needed more time. I warned him. Dolores leaned in, her voice low and sharp. And then what? Turner sighed. He got mouthy. Got on my face. I didn't plan it. Just snapped. I didn't even mean to pull the trigger. He lowered his head and whispered, almost to himself. It was supposed to be just a scare. Back in Gainesville, Clarissa Monroe stood at her apartment window, watching raindrops race down the glass. Her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. She answered before the second ring. Miss Monroe, Dolores said, we got him. Turner confessed. Clarissa closed her eyes. So it's over? Dolores hesitated. Not quite, but it's a start. There was a pause. You still want to pursue the case against your husband's conviction? Clarissa turned slowly toward the box she kept under her bed, full of Reggie's old letters, court transcripts, newspaper clippings from the trial. She had read them so many times, the ink had begun to fade. Yes, she said, more than ever. 2 days later, Clarissa sat across from Detective Carrington in a quiet conference room at the station. A stack of files sat between them. Dolores slid one across the table. I've gone over Reggie's case. There are inconsistencies. The witness who identified him admitted later she only saw the suspect for a few seconds. The fingerprints on the gas station counter, partial, not a full match. And this, she tapped the corner of a photograph. This was taken hours before the robbery. Surveillance footage from another location. A man matching Reggie's build, but it's blurry and the timestamp's off by 40 minutes. Clarissa leaned in, heart pounding. You believe he's innocent? Dolores didn't blink. I believe it's worth reopening. Clarissa fought the lump rising in her throat. He confessed because he thought he was protecting DJ. He didn't know DJ would throw him away like garbage. And now DJ's gone, Dolores added quietly. And the only man still paying the price is Reggie. Later that night, Clarissa sat with a pen and a fresh sheet of paper. She hadn't written Reggie in weeks. Not since seeing DJ's face in that driveway. But now, with Turner behind bars and the case cracking open, she had something to say. Dear Reggie, she began, you were right to believe in second chances. But now it's your turn. She looked out the window, past the empty street and the neon glow of the liquor store across the way. I'm coming. And this time, I'm not coming to visit. She folded the letter gently, slid it into the envelope, and sealed it with a steady hand. The bus ride to Red Ridge Correctional Facility took over 9 hours, winding through pine woods and dusty highway shoulders. Clarissa Monroe barely noticed the miles. Her hand stayed clutched around the strap of her purse, the envelope with Dolores Carrington's report tucked safely inside. It had been nearly a year since her last visit. Reggie's letters had continued faithfully, even when hers had slowed to a trickle. She hadn't known how to respond. Not while DJ's face haunted her, not while the truth stayed buried. But now she had something real, something solid. Hope. Red Ridge loomed in the distance like a fortress, gray concrete, barbed wire fencing, and the bitter smell of iron and heat. Clarissa moved through security, showed her ID, signed her name. The guards knew her by now. Still, she felt different this time. This time, she wasn't just a wife visiting her husband. She was a woman on a mission. Inside the visiting room, Clarissa sat at the small metal table, her foot tapping against the concrete floor. The clock on the wall ticked louder than usual. Her heart thudded with every second. Then, the side door opened, and there he was. Reggie Monroe, thinner than he used to be, his dreadlocks now long gone, replaced by a close-cut style. He walked slower, his posture changed by years of confinement. But when he saw her, his face lit up. Clar, he said, that voice still rough, still familiar. She stood up and wrapped her arms around him the moment he reached her, holding him as tightly as the rules allowed. It's good to see you, he whispered, eyes shimmering. You have no idea, Clarissa said. They sat, and for a long moment, neither spoke. They just looked at each other, older, weathered, but not broken. Clarissa finally pulled out the envelope and slid it across the table. DJ's dead, she said softly. Shot in his kitchen. The man who killed him confessed. Reggie's eyes widened in stunned silence. He's gone. Clarissa nodded. And Detective Carrington is reopening your case. She believes you might be innocent. Reggie sat back, as if the weight of those words took time to settle. I never thought I'd hear that, he said. Not after all this time. Clarissa reached for his hand. You were trying to protect someone who didn't deserve it. But that ends now. I'm not stopping until you're free. He looked at her, his Clar, with something that hadn't been in his eyes in years. Belief. You still believe in me? He asked. Clarissa smiled, tears finally slipping free. I never stopped. And this time, neither would she. Clarissa Monroe returned to Gainesville with a different fire in her chest. It wasn't rage anymore. Not the white-hot kind that had carried her into DJ's house, or the quiet, coiled fear that had paralyzed her after he threatened Reggie's safety. This was purpose. She no longer moved through life just surviving. She had a reason to fight, a direction. The very next morning, She was waiting outside Detective Dolores Carrington's office before the building even opened. Dolores arrived, coffee in one hand, a surprised smile tugging at the corner of her mouth. "You don't waste time," she said, unlocking the door. "I've already wasted 5 years," Clarissa replied. Inside the precinct conference room, the two women spread out files, transcripts, and evidence across the table. Clarissa had brought everything she'd ever kept. Reggie's letters, court documents, newspaper clippings, even the original confession he had signed back then. Dolores slid a folder toward her. "We're petitioning for a post-conviction review," she explained. "It won't be easy. The courts don't like to admit mistakes." Clarissa flipped through the documents, eyes scanning quickly. "How long does it take? Could be weeks. Could be months. And what do we do in the meantime?" Dolores gave her a look. "We build the strongest case we can. Find cracks in the timeline. Track down old witnesses. Look for anything at all, that proves someone else committed that robbery." Clarissa nodded, determination hardening her jaw. She had worked double shifts before, stayed up all night tending to patients who had no one. She knew how to outlast the impossible. Now, she was doing it for the man she loved. Days passed, then weeks. Clarissa spent every spare moment reviewing Reggie's case. She took days off from a nursing home, pored over grainy footage, compared timestamps, made charts with string and thumbtacks like she'd seen in detective shows. Dolores introduced her to a local legal aid nonprofit, and a young attorney named Maya DeWitt took on Reggie's case pro bono. Maya was sharp, fresh out of law school, and hungry to prove herself. "This case stinks," Maya said, flipping through Reggie's confession. He said he needed money for his mom's treatment, but there were no hospital records, no receipts. The prosecution never verified it. Clarissa frowned, because he was covering for DJ. DJ's mom was the one with medical bills, not ours. Reggie just used that as an excuse. Maya nodded. "Then we need to find something DJ left behind that ties him to the robbery." The trio dug in. Clarissa, Dolores, and Maya. A strange alliance of widow, cop, and rookie lawyer. They tracked down the gas station clerk who had testified against Reggie. He was older now, working at a bait shop in Alabama. Under questioning, he admitted the truth. "I didn't really see the guy. Just assumed it was him after the cops showed me a picture." Another break came when Maya subpoenaed DJ's bank records under his real name, Derek Jackson. A week before the robbery, he'd taken out a payday loan from a storefront one town over. And guess what? Maya grinned. That same location had a robbery 4 months earlier by a guy who looked just like DJ. Case was never solved. Piece by piece, the wall was cracking. Clarissa could feel it. She wasn't just hoping anymore. She was working the truth into something real, something the system could no longer ignore. And she made herself a promise. "I don't care how long it takes. I'm going to walk into that prison, look Reggie in the eye, and tell him it's over. He's coming home." 6 months later, Clarissa Monroe stood at the gates of Red Ridge Correctional Facility, but this time, she wasn't here for a visit. She was here to bring her husband home. The journey had been long, tangled, and exhausting. There were hearings, objections, days when the system seemed designed to swallow truth whole and spit out more red tape. But then came the moment that changed everything. A judge, after reviewing new evidence, including the inconsistencies in the original eyewitness statement, DJ's criminal record, and Turner's sworn testimony, vacated Reggie Monroe's conviction. The gavel came down with finality. Clarissa hadn't cried in the courtroom, not even when Maya squeezed her hand so tight her fingers went numb. But now, standing outside those gates in the early morning sun, her body trembling from the inside out, she couldn't stop the tears. The metal doors groaned open, and there he was. Reggie stepped out slowly, wearing the same state-issued denim pants and gray t-shirt he'd worn for nearly a decade. But his stride was different now, lighter, freer. His eyes scanned the parking lot until they landed on her. For a second, neither of them moved. Then Clarissa ran. Reggie caught her in his arms like he'd been doing it his whole life. They didn't speak right away. There were no words big enough for that kind of moment. Only the sound of her heart hammering against his chest and his hand cradling the back of her head like he never wanted to let go. "You did it," he finally whispered. "You brought me back." Clarissa pulled back just enough to look him in the eyes. "We did it," she corrected. "You and me. Together." He smiled, wide and unburdened for the first time in years. "I thought I'd forgotten what sunlight felt like on my skin," he said, looking up at the sky. Clarissa slipped her hand into his. "Let's go find out what the world still feels like." They drove back to Gainesville in a borrowed car. No destination, no big plans, just two people reclaiming hours stolen from them. They stopped at a diner halfway home. The waitress, a gray-haired woman with too much eyeliner and a thick Georgia drawl, offered coffee and didn't ask questions. Reggie ordered pancakes and bacon. Clarissa got French toast. "This might be the best damn bacon I've ever had," he said, chewing with a kind of reverence. Clarissa laughed, wiping her eyes. "You gonna cry over bacon?" "I might," he grinned. "You don't know what kind of hell they serve on plastic trays in there." Later, they sat on a park bench under a blooming dogwood tree, the same kind Clarissa had walked past so many mornings alone. Now, Reggie was beside her. She reached in her purse and pulled out a small velvet box. "What's this?" he asked. "Something overdue." Inside was his wedding band. The one he wore on their wedding day. The one she'd kept in her drawer every single night since he was taken away. Reggie looked at it for a long moment before slipping it back on, his hands trembling slightly. "Still fits," he said. Clarissa smiled through the sunlight and tears. "So do we." The world hadn't stopped turning while Reggie was gone. But now, finally, they were turning with it, hand in hand, heart to heart, forward, toward whatever came next. Weeks passed, but every morning still felt like a miracle. Clarissa would wake to the soft sound of Reggie making coffee in their tiny kitchen, humming some old blues tune under his breath. Sometimes she'd just lie there and listen, letting the sound wrap around her like a blanket. Freedom, she realized, wasn't always loud. Sometimes it came softly, in the clink of a coffee mug, the rustle of sheets, or the way a man breathed easy for the first time in years. Reggie had started working part-time at a local auto shop. He came home every night with grease on his hands and peace in his eyes. They didn't talk much about the past unless it came up naturally, like when he saw a kid riding a bike and remembered how he used to build them from scratch with DJ when they were kids before everything turned sideways. Clarissa had gone back to the nursing home. Ms. Millie still asked for her by name. Life was quieter now, smaller, but it was theirs. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the rooftops of their neighborhood, they sat on their porch swing side by side. "You think the world will ever see me as more than just a man who got out of prison?" Reggie asked softly. Clarissa turned to him, eyes steady. "I don't care how the world sees you," she said. "I know who you are. That's enough for me." He smiled, eyes shining in the amber light. "You saved me, Clar." "No," she whispered. "We saved each other." They sat in silence after that, the kind that didn't need filling. A breeze rustled the magnolia leaves, and in the distance, a train horn sounded, low and haunting. Reggie reached over and laced his fingers through hers. In that moment, no one else existed. No prison walls, no stolen years. Just them, alive, together, and finally free.